Marvelous.
Good evening, everybody. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we are delighted to have with us our friend Randy Wayne White. He's going to be talking about the brand new book, Tomlinson's Wake. Barbara has a copy she's holding up. We will be getting signed books, as always. I'll put a link in the comments field if you'd like to purchase one. And if you have questions for Randy, go ahead and type them in, and I'll be back on screen towards the end of the hour. But I was interested just to kick it off, Barbara. When did you and Randy first meet? Was it Sanibel Flats?
It was, and it was the man who, what was it, killed? What's the full
Invented
title?
Florida.
The man who invented Florida.
Right. All right. Randy published his first three books, and there wasn't a lot of attention paid to them by the publisher. Much more by me, actually, than by the publisher. And Randy was thinking, we were just saying that Randy was actually thinking about abandoning his writing career. And I was so upset because Sanibel Flats was one of our absolute best. It was a best-selling paperback, if I remember, because it was a small hardcover. I actually own Randy's entire oeuvre signed from Sanibel Flats. Sanibel Flats is worth a lot of money today, isn't it?
One just sold for $2,700.
Wow.
They only they only paid me $5,000 to write the damn thing.
Um, yes, that really hurts, doesn't it? If we were in my library, which we were not, I could maneuver the Zoom screen here to show you my entire shelf and a half of signed Randy
Oh
Wayne.
my God.
But anyway, I accosted Randy, I think would be fair, and said to him that his books were way too good to for him to stop writing, and he just needed to rethink who was going to publish them and all the rest. And so he did. And actually, this is your third publisher, if I remember right.
It is, yeah. St. Martin's Press was first. Putnam's was terrific.
Yep,
Neil Nyren, terrific editor. He left. Sadly, finding good editors is
it's
not,
hard.
not an easy thing to do. Now I'm with Collier, HarperCollins, and they've
You
been
are.
just terrific. And
Yeah.
young adult novels are with Macmillan, but HarperCollins they've been terrific, and I'm very blessed, Barbara. And thank you so much for talking me into to continue writing books. As I forgot, I was a full-time fishing guide in those years.
That's right.
And as a full-time fishing guide, I was making $50,000, $60,000 a year. Now, to me, that was a lot of money. And
Well, but it was a long time ago when it was a lot of money.
I'm old. I'm old. And St. Martin's Press was paying me, again, $5,000 advances. And I had two young sons. I'm no financial genius, but I thought, I can't keep doing this BS. But I did, thanks to you.
Anyway, it's worked out. It's worked out a lot better. I seem to have tilted my screen here, so I've kind of sunk out of sight. Right. So anyway, Randy was originally going to come and see us for Tomlinson's
I
Wake.
wanted to. I wanted to. I love coming out there.
Well, last year when he got here, it was after, or it was to talk about One Deadly Eye, which
Right.
was a hurricane informed thriller. And he had amazing photos that we all watched, some video and all
Yeah.
of the horrible hurricane in Florida. Randy wrote it out, which if you know Randy, will not surprise you, but more prudent people went inland, but Randy stayed. Anyway, poetically, he was not able to come this time, and we are about to experience some kind of a storm here in Scottsdale.
The
So
monsoon.
well, it's actually not a monsoon. It's the tail end of a hurricane out in the Pacific that is blowing our way. We've had a disappointing monsoon season, but none of them are like your hurricanes in Florida. I mean, the monsoons here, Randy, are really more dust than rain to a great degree. Did you see videos of the haboob towards the end of August where the dust rolled in and just took over downtown?
I saw some clips, absolutely horrific. Reminded me of the Dust Bowl in the 1930s.
That's
Not that
right.
I was there, but
Yeah.
just that, natural disasters are only natural disasters when people are involved. hurricanes are a natural phenomenon. And again, I'm sorry, I sound like Walter Brennan, but I've explained that. But when people are involved,
Yeah.
it is intense and extraordinarily powerful.
Well, they really are. Fortunately, I don't think anybody died in this one. And they tend to blow in from the south and the west because that's where the dirt is available from either developers or just the desert. We never got any of it here on the east side. It all kind of died over the middle. So neither the bookstore nor our home was affected by the haboob. But
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, me too. Anyway, Tomlinson's Wake, if you
Yes.
remember from One Deadly Eye, those of you who are watching, I'm assuming, are Randy Wayne White fans, so you probably read it. We recall that Tomlinson, Doc Ford's longtime, I don't even know what I want to call him, sometimes wingman, sometimes major problems, sometimes guru, whatever.
All the above, yeah.
Anyway, he disappeared. And so we were left at the end of One Deadly Eye, wondering whether, in fact, that was the last we would see of Tomlinson. And the entire, it's given away by the name of this book, Tomlinson's Wake, that Tomlinson must have survived, right? Did you know that all along? Did you just want to tease us with Tomlinson's possible demise?
No, I truly didn't know it, Barbara. One Deadly Eye, I think, is one of my best books. My
Mhm.
wife and I, Wendy Webb, we wrote out the hurricane on Sanibel Island, Category 5 hurricane. It was intense, absolutely intense. And it was the third hurricane I've gotten a direct hit by. You think I'd learn. But this was so extraordinarily powerful. I knew as being an amateur historian that the island of Sanibel Island on the southwest coast of Florida had only flooded once, and that was 1926. So what are the odds? What are the odds? That hurricane 2022 was worse by far. The intensity, the duration, it hung over this island as if it was trying to uproot every living thing, literally. And I told myself during that experience, Randy, pay attention. You will never see anything like this again in your life. And I paid attention and I took careful notes. And within a week after the storm, I began writing One Deadly Eye because I didn't want to lose a detail. And I suspect it's the most accurate historical account of a Category 5 hurricane, surviving one on the southwest Florida barrier island. So towards the end of the book, Doc Ford's friend Tomlinson, Doc Ford being the linear, rational scientist, Tomlinson being the nonlinear, spiritual, wistful, religious believing hipster. Tomlinson decides to take his sailboat and sail into the eye of the storm. Some enlightenment there perhaps awaited, or not. Doc Ford and Tomlinson, as am I. I'm a licensed FCC ham radio operator. Thank goodness, because after the storm of 22, I was able to radio communications with St. Pete Coast Guard and have people evacuated. Thank goodness. And then for the week after that, I ran radio comms for a special operation group. I'm not going to go into that, but Tomlinson sails off. And the last word Doc Ford has from his hipster sidekick, Tomlinson, it was a ham radio contact with an operator in Pinar del Rio, Cuba, where I've played baseball many times. I've been to Cuba many times. I adore Cuba and Cubans. And their transmission from Tomlinson was a mayday. He had hit a reef off Honduras. And that was the last Doc Ford heard of Tomlinson. So in Tomlinson's wake, Doc Ford literally sails off in Tomlinson's wake to track him down in Mesoamerica, Honduras, Quintana Roo. I love that area. I love the history of the Maya, the Olmec, the Toltec. I've told you before, I live in an old house on an island. built up on the remnants of a shell pyramid built by contemporaries of the Maya. And the shell mound dates back 500 to 3,000 years. That house has been there since the late 1800s. A great place to ride out a storm, but my layperson belief is that there had to have been interaction between the Maya and the indigenous people of the west coast of Florida. I think there had to be.
Sure.
Shell pyramids here are east-west. They have courtyards. They have canals, just like in Tikal, Guatemala, Tulum, Copan. They are so similar in terms of their design. So I love that part of the world, and I've spent a lot of time there, a lot of time. Quintana Roo, Honduras. I was in Nicaragua during the war there. I was in Panama during the invasion. I was in Guatemala during two of the revolutions. So I'm quite familiar with that country side and the people whom I absolutely adore. So I thought, send Doc Ford in search of Tomlinson into this region that in some respects is similar in history to Southwest Florida. And their marina, Jenkins Bay Marina, in this hurricane in the novel, was absolutely destroyed. And Tomlinson has gone in search of a new beginning, a new home. And what a great place for rebirth. Quintana Roo is where, more than 60 million years ago, a gigantic meteorite hit.
That's right.
And it killed all the land, almost all the land-based fauna, all the dinosaurs worldwide. It was a total rebirth of the earth. And I thought, send them to this historic hotspot of rebirth, and let's see what happens.
I love it. Now, one of the things that we've learned over the course of the entire series, Doc Ford looked like a mild-mannered Sanitist living in his little community in Jenkins Bay, Florida. And, biologist, whatever. But every once in a while, there's kind of a hint that maybe he had an interesting background. Maybe he was kind of a black ops guy. He seemed to have some real skills. And in this book, in Thomas's Wake, you really bring that forward. I mean, Doc is, we can see that before we met him back in Sanibel Flats. And occasionally in a couple of the books,
Yeah,
we can see that he has a skill set that goes far beyond being a mild-mannered scientist and actually makes him more like a stone-cold assassin. So did you always intend, Doc, to have that, that kind of a skill set? And he has a wonderful temperament too, because it never seems to run away with him. Or has that evolved, Randy? I mean, you've written all these books, so surely both you and Doc Ford have evolved over the course of the books from Sanibel Flats to Tomlinson's Wake.
well, I hope so. I knew that in this book, Tomlinson's Wake, I wanted Tomlinson to actually find out who Doc Ford is, and he did.
Oh, okay. That
And
makes good sense.
And he was horrified. He was
Yes.
horrified.
Well,
But
I mean, Thomason has his own different, I mean, aside from all of his spiritual things and all, Thomason, he comes close to being a sex addict, so, well, he
close,
does.
close.
Yeah, well, okay, actually is, right. And
I
so,
guess that's only if you get arrested, maybe. But anyway,
well, but I mean, that's the duality in Tomlinson, and it's not, therefore, it sort of balances out that Doc Ford would have a duality in the same way. I mean, no one is ever just one thing.
that polarity, when I started the series, and I had no reason to think there would be a second, third, or fourth book, but I wanted one character, Doc Ford, to be purely linear, pragmatic, practical. I wanted the other character to be purely spiritual, wistful, believing in God. I think those two cerebral components, I can only speak for myself, those two cerebral components in me, they're always at war. Always. They always have been. And at a certain age, one begins to wonder which will win out. the wistful spiritual, I would love to believe in UFOs. I would love to believe in parapsychology. I would love to believe in parallel universes. I don't. However, the wistful side of me longs to believe in those things. And I thought through these two characters, I can say just about anything I want to and get away with it, for one thing. That's a flippant response, but true. And the other, I thought I could explore various questions regarding the environment, spirituality, human nature through these two characters and get, if not a balanced insight, at least a rational, perhaps fair insight to the complexities of who we are. And I never go into politics. I have zero interest in politics. I don't front either side.
Oh,
But
Florida is an interesting political arena at the moment, so it's just as well.
it's just wild.
I
What
know.
people fail to realize about Florida, and I shouldn't drop any names, but in Florida is a closed primary state. And as you know, as an attorney, which means I live in Lee County, Florida. It's hugely Republican. It's a closed primary. So if I'm registered as a Democrat or an independent, I can't vote in the primary. And whomever is elected in the primary is going to win. He's going to be, or she's going to be our next congressperson. So I would be a fool not to register as Republican. If I lived in Palm Beach County or Hillsborough County, I would register as a Democrat because in a closed primary, whomever is elected, they're going to win. So to have a voice, one must choose one or the other in Florida. And I'm not going to go into the name dropping thing, but anyway.
No, there's no point in it. It's just, it's a battleground state in lots of ways. Arizona is a battleground state in lots of ways. And,
Is it a closed primary state?
no, we don't have closed primaries, but we have a real division between, urban Arizona, rural Arizona. It's different than Florida. And right now we have two Democratic senators, a Democratic government, and a Democratic attorney general. And we all voted, well, we didn't all, but the majority in Arizona voted Republican in this last election. So for president, but not for any other position. So I thought that was really interesting that,
That's good. I don't know.
yeah, the senatorial, but the other, going back to where I was thinking about, that one of the other features of the books, aside from the duality of your two main characters, Doc Ford and Tomlinson, is that Doc Ford in particular has this terrific sense of community. I mean, he's got this group of people that have lived around him in the small harbor community where he is, and friendships really matter to him. Tomlinson's has had people come and go more than Doc has had. But you did give Doc a romantic interest called Hannah, and she actually had 3, I think it was, books of her own. And now you mentioned her in this book. She doesn't appear, but so Doc is still has some kind of a tie to Hannah, which maybe you'll explore again. So whereas Tomlinson just kind of recycles people, I mean, or at least they move in and out of his life. And so that's another, I think, interesting contrast between them.
Well, in Tomlinson's way, I really explored the value, the intricacies of friendship.
Mhm.
It's so mysterious. We all, I suspect, have people, friends who, wherever they may be, they are always at our elbow. They are our closest friends, always at our elbow. And I think friendship has far more to do with alchemy than chemistry. It's quite mysterious how it works. One of my closest friends is a guy named Bill Spaceman Lee.
Right.
For the baseball fans out there, Bill Spaceman Lee pitched for the Red Sox. He's in the Red Sox Hall of Fame, left-handed pitcher. We met in 1987. I was catching for a senior professional baseball team. He was the manager of the St. Pete professional baseball team. And at Outlang Stadium in St. Pete, after batting practice, I see this guy walking towards me, Barbara. He's got this huge beard and long hair. He's wearing a Che Guevara shirt and a Russian national baseball team cap. And I thought, who is this pathetic old hippie? And we just hit it off. And we could not be more different.
Right.
That's true. Could not be more different. Yet we are and have been for 30 years, closest confidants and friends. And Bill Lee says he is Tomlinson. I will not argue his claim. Bill Lee was on one of the most famous covers in Sports Illustrated history. This is true. Look it up. During the World Series in the 70s, Red Sox against the Cincinnati Reds. Bill's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Full picture of Bill. He's in full windup. Fenway Park. This makes sense. Red Sox. He's wearing a Boston beanie cap and a spacesuit and oxygen tanks. They don't call Bill the spaceman because he went to the Air Force Academy.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Oh, I've always thought he had some, at least partial inspiration for Tomlinson. I mean, it helps to have, to delineate a character and to see him as clearly as you do. It probably does arise from somebody you actually know and not somebody that you just entirely made up.
Well, huge influence. In the course of that interview, Sports Illustrated, Bill was asked, do you think there should be mandatory drug testing in Major League Baseball? Bill's a brilliant guy. He truly is. And Bill ruminates, thinks this over, and replies, mandatory drug testing. I've tested almost every drug there is. And some of that crap's really bad, man. No one should force you. It should not be mandatory. And that's the way his mind works. Another influence on Tomlinson was my great friend, Peter Matheson,
Right.
Absolutely brilliant writer.
Yes, he was.
One of my dearest, closest friends and confidants. And he was an ordained Rinzai Zen Buddhist priest. I mean, he really was. And we were so close. And Peter tried to take me through beginner's Zen mind one year at my old house in Pine Island. And we sat down and he called me Randolph. My name's not Randolph. It's not Randall. It's Randy. But he called Randolph. Now, I want you to count your breaths, 1 to 10. And I began to breathe. I got 4 and I started laughing. He started laughing. And we did it about 3 times. He said, screw you, Randolph, we're done. That was the end of my Zen training. But Peter had much to do with the creation of Tomlinson.
I can see that. I mean, he really was a wonderful writer. And, your background as a fishing guide, you're rooted in the outdoors, I think I told you this, but at some point we were taking a cruise from Miami somewhere, and we had like a day in Miami because only a real optimist would show up on the day the ship is sailing from, the port. Right. So we rented a car. And we drove through the Everglades and we went all the way across to Marco Island. It was great. We hiked in the Everglades. We drove, the southern route. We did the whole northern route because I'd never been there, and you've written about them so eloquently. I really wanted to see them. And the next day we didn't have to be back. I guess we actually left ourselves 2 days. And so I signed us up with the National Park Service to take 2 trips. And one of them, we went out through the mangrove swamps because
Yeah.
You've written about those, and it just reinforced for me just how great a writer you are to be there creeping our way along waterways in the mangrove swamps, beating off mosquitoes, the whole bit. But the other one took us around to Sanibel. We didn't actually get to land on it, but we got to do that. So I feel that your books are an inspiration to travel because you write so eloquently about Florida. I mean, you've written about underground rivers, you've written about, the ancient orange trees, you've written about the shell mounds, and you've taken us to Cuba. I don't recall that we've gone to the Mosquito Coast of Honduras up until this book. But, for those who haven't read Randy, it really is among all the other things that are in the books, you get a real travel experience. So did you wrote some books as a fishing guide. You
Yeah,
wrote at least what, three nonfiction books? Maybe more.
I was writing columns for Outside Magazine. Such
Right.
a lucky break, but yes, yes.
So, Randy already had informed himself in his ability to write about landscape and nature and all those good things, which really enriched the novels. So they're a whole reading experience. So Randy got a great review for Tomlinson's Wake in the New York Times Book Review. And one of the paragraphs that I particularly like, which I will quote because I got out my phone here. Ford
Hmm.
encounters a slew of shady characters, criminals, traffickers, an archaeologist sex addict, not Tomlinson, as it turns out, a menace known locally as Iron Baby, as he tries to get a handle on the situation. Then an earthquake hits. All right, we've done hurricanes. Now we get an earthquake, sending everything into disarray, and Ford realizes things are not as they appear. The Tampa Bay Times goes on, will Ford and Tomlinson make it back to Dinkins Bay Marina alive? Find out this summer.
Oh,
And the real book spy says this is not his, i.e., Randy's, this is not his first trip to the most dangerous country in Mesoamerica, and no one is better equipped to deal with flesh traffickers, paramilitary killers, an archaeologist addicted to sex, see that comes back again, and a homicidal giant known locally as Iron Baby. So that's one of the really fun things about Tomlinson's Wake is that you have this very large cast. I mean, you often have a large cast, but in this one,
golly.
you really got a group. And I'm trying to envision why are they all in this place in Honduras?
I truly have not read those reviews, and that's the truth.
You haven't?
No, we're still recovering from the hurricanes. We had two more in a row, and I
It's
work my books, take care of my grandkids, and I just I try to avoid the noise, the extraordinary noise of the internet.
Well, your reviews for this book have really been powerful,
Good.
laudatory, enthusiastic, and and well deserved. So I'm glad I read you little
Good.
bits of them there.
Yeah,
The New York Times wrote a very long review. I'll be happy to send you the whole thing if you'd like
never
it.
saw it. Never saw it. I just don't.
Well, I'll send it to you because you'll really like it.
I live a hermit-like life. I truly do, and I like that. I'm not cloistered, but again, that relentless outside den of noise of the internet, and I just I much prefer not to be a part of that. I,
Well,
I
I'm
don't.
with you there. I don't have any personal social media, but I am forced in my job to
Yes,
actually read book reviews and, connect with the public and all. But my skill set is pretty minimal for an octogenarian. I don't push it a whole lot.
octogenarian my butt.
I'm going to be 85, Randy. So I'm
Yeah,
working my way towards being a nonagenarian, but
whatever you're doing, keep doing it because it works.
thank you. So anyway, I mean, we've been to Cuba with you, and those have been very exciting books. And I think you've explained very well why Tomlinson sailed off in the midst of One Deadly Eye, or at
Right.
the end into the hurricane. So you've wound up in Honduras. And why the Mosquito Coast? I mean, why is it even called the Mosquito Coast? For the obvious reason?
Sometimes the obvious reasons. Also, in the 1600s, slave ships ran aground there. Uh, Castaway people, white and black, lived there, interacted with the indigenous people, whom they called the Mosquita, Miskta,
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Mosquita people, have their own language. And the Quiche Maya. And again, I've spent a lot of time in that region, and I absolutely adore those folks. Um, Many of them come to Florida and probably Arizona to work. I'm talking about Guatemalans, but brilliant, brilliant people. I adore them. And many people do not realize this fact, that when Guatemalans come to this nation, they don't speak English, of course, nor do they speak Spanish. They speak Quiche Mayan. And so the kids are filtered into Spanish-speaking programs
Right.
mistakenly, and they just think these kids are boneheads. Well, they're certainly not boneheads. They don't speak Spanish. And I just adore those people, always have, and have associated with many here in Florida, whom, particularly after the hurricane, I tried to help, and
Sure.
hopefully I did.
You know, that's an assumption we often make. I was thinking of the various times I've been to Peru, 4 or 5 anyway, and you do sort of assume they all speak Spanish, but many of them speak Quechua instead, especially if you go to the highlands around Lake Titicaca and so forth.
Yeah,
And you know, I mean, we've always been a language melting pot, but for some reason at this point in time, we seem to assume that, you know, language is like everybody is Mandarin or everybody is Spanish or everybody is English or
the
something.
generalities, yes.
Yeah, but not true. Although I do think probably the internet is increasingly um, forcing people to learn a major language just, you know, in order to navigate it. At one point, Rob and I took the first Northwest Passage cruise across the top of around Alaska, across the top of Canada to Greenland and back. I think it was in 2016 or 7 anyway. And it was interesting that and we went across the villages way up on the at the very north of Canada along the water.
The
Um,
Enu.
they all had discs and they all had internet that was, you know, their primary way. And
They did.
the kids therefore were all you know, bilingual, where they probably wouldn't have been before.
Wow.
Well, you know, but I mean, that's the way the world is trending. Anyway, we're back on the Mosquito Coast. You have a young boy who was kind of the pivotal character
Right.
in this story, and he's not the first youth that you have introduced into your books. There certainly has been in Cuba and so forth. But anyway, tell us a little bit about this young man and what is it that people believe about him or he believes about himself?
Well, he's an orphan, um, and he was born with a physical defect. He only has one arm, and on his other arm, he has a little flipper. And so they call him alito, which in Spanish means fin, like the fin of a fish. It's derogatory to a degree, but he's an orphan. That is his name. And there are ethnologists and archaeologists in this book who do some DNA research. The last reigning king of the Maya was a guy called Canek, Canek, who died about 400 years ago. And he began a revolution against the Spaniards and was just absolutely tortured and killed. But Canek was the last reigning king of the Maya. And they find his grave and they do DNA testing and they cross test with various files throughout Honduras and Quintana Roo, Mesoamerica. And they find his closest DNA relative is an orphan child with one arm.
Uh-huh.
The people in authority began to look for him because the demographics, the population majority in Honduras and Mesoamerica are indigenous people who still, some of whom, believe that the king, will return. And they're afraid if they find this kid and they use him for political purposes, he could reunite the people for revolution or reunite them for the benefits of various big business, palm oil industry, etc. And the kid has a savant understanding of things. So he hits it off with Tomlinson, of course, right away. And he's charismatic. And he is aware of Canek, the lost king of the Maya. And Tomlinson is having an affair with the archaeologist who
Of course.
discovered the DNA connection. And so I found that charming, the idea of a young child, charismatic, who was pissed off at the ruling class, who has a deformity, who is not perfect, becoming a real threat to the government. And people are trying to kill him.
Right.
Tomlinson's trying to save him, and as does Doc Ford try to.
Right. So, I mean, in many respects, this is what do we want to call it? A chase story.
Yeah,
Where
it's a
this,
chase story.
yeah. So lots of things going into the book. And, none of your books are simple. I think they're all, even One Deadly Eye, which is, is hurricane driven, but nonetheless, you always bring so many different elements into your stories.
Drives me
Great.
nuts.
No, I mean, it's what makes reading them such a rich experience. Um, are you working on a new book?
I'm kind of working on my autobiography, which I was contracted to 2 years ago. But no, I need to get back to work. We're still dealing with the hurricane stuff and waiting for Tomlinson's Wake to come out. I will say Tomlinson's Wake there are some third person chapters interspersed throughout the novel. And it's Tomlinson chapter 1, Tomlinson chapter 2,
Right.
third person Tomlinson. I find them among the funniest things I've ever written in my life. I laughed out loud at some of them
Did
because
you?
I absolutely did. Tomlinson at the dinosaur park, and yeah,
I've always thought that you must be having a great time when you're writing the books because, at the end of the day, despite what's all going on, they're really good humor.
I hope so. Well, I like people, and I learned early. I don't meet many stupid people, and I read books occasionally where the author seems to just hate people. I don't. I like people. Uh, the most common example are sports columnists, where if they can't write something nasty, it's the easiest way to be funny.
Yeah.
Being nasty is the easiest way to be funny. Deriding, derogatory, contemptuous. And I don't, I've never done that. And I hopefully never will.
No,
But
you don't. You obviously really have an affection for your characters, even the bad people. Um,
I would agree. Yeah.
you write about them as sympathy. So this is what, book 28 in this series, I think.
28 Doc Ford novel. Yeah, there are four Hannah Smith novels. Yeah.
Right.
28.
So yeah, that's a big number. Who knew?
Much thanks to you, Barbara. It's been a delight.
Well, hardly, but I am glad that I was able to divert you from despair into going forward. I really am. But it was very selfish because I've always loved reading them. And we've had some wonderful times together, and I hope that we'll get you back to Scottsdale before both of us, are forcibly retired.
We will. I look forward to it. Thank you so much. Delightful. Best to the group, Patrick, and
Thank
your
you. Well, we're not done because we're going to call Patrick up to see if anybody watching has questions or
okay.
comments.
Okay.
So hang on for a minute. Patrick, it's time to return.
Here I am. Yeah. Actually, I wanted to ask you, Randy. I think you've told a couple times over the years a pretty cool story about John D. MacDonald.
Yeah.
Um, can you kind of give us a taste of that?
John D. MacDonald, just a lovely, brilliant man, Florida author. For those of who have not heard of John D. MacDonald, please look him up. A trailblazer, and back during my fishing guide years, I started guiding in 1974. I'm pretty old, Patrick. 1970s, 80s. A couple of my friends read John D. MacDonald's books. I never had. And this is when I was living on Pine Island near Sanibel. And they kept talking about this author, John D. MacDonald, how great he is, he lives on Siesta Key, Sarasota. And some Wednesday morning, I finally said to those guys, let's get in the boat. Let's drive up there and find him. I should back up here. We'd been drinking. And I took my boat with a couple of my buddies, my baseball buddies, ran the boat up to Siesta Key. 70 miles, that's a long way in a boat. By the time we got to Siesta Key, which at that time was still pretty built up, already built up, we'd run out of beer. It was getting windy. And I said, where's this guy live? They said, we don't know. I go, what the hell? They said, let's just go home. I said, no, let's at least half. So pull up to a guy in a little tin boat, aluminum boat. I said, do you know where this author, John D. McDonald, lives? And the guy points to the beach. He goes, yeah, he lives right there. I bow my boat up on the beach. We get out. The door opens. I see his head stick out. To this day, I can see it. And we walk up, and Patrick, he could not have been nicer to us. And my friends are asking him questions about the books, and he was just a lovely guy. And my friends and I, without invitation, of course, began to do that trip 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
And we would take him a special bottle of Jen Boodles. Jen was the Jen. And the last time I saw Mr. McDonald, he poked his head out the door, and I can still see him. He said to his wife, oh, Dorothy, our friends from Pine Island are here again. But he was a wonderful guy. And I hope to my credit, I never told him I wanted to be a writer, but he was just a delight. And through him, I met McKinley Cantor, who was McDonald's neighbor. Cantor wrote Andersonville, a Pulitzer Prize winner, another lovely guy, and very inspirational in terms of my desires to be a writer. And again, I never told either one of them I want to write, nor would I ask for them for advice. Why would they bother giving it to me? But just a very decent guy, went to Harvard, master's degree. But yeah, oh, Dorothy, our friends from Pine Island are here again.
That's so great. I love that. Yeah, he had a long career, wrote a lot of wonderful books.
Sure did.
He did, yeah. And a very decent, very smart guy, very affable. I would have called the damn police. I mean, I'd do it now if somebody pulled that shit on me.
Well, maybe that was a slightly more innocent age,
Maybe
people
so.
weren't so alarmed by things as they are at the moment.
So yeah, here's an interesting question from Renee. She asks, Randy, is there anything you've added to your hurricane supplies since Ian hit? Have you stepped up your game with?
Well, Renee, and everyone else, I would urge you to do this. I've got my FCC ham radio license. I urge you to check into it. There are 3 or 4 various licenses available. The first license is called the technician's license, very limited in the various frequencies one can broadcast in. The other is a more advanced called the general license. I have a general license, so I can broadcast on just about any frequency. And during a hurricane, when the cell phone towers go out, there is no communication, zero, zilch. But because I had a ham radio license, I was able to stay in radio contact with Coast Guard St. Pete, other ham operators. I was able to help people get evacuated off Sanibel Island. I would urge people to look into it. Otherwise, really good flashlights, and I think I'll leave it at that.
We were talking before the program about when Randy was here last. I think it was just a year ago. You had some visuals of the footage from the hurricane, and I just
Yeah.
remember, wow, And then Randy says, "Well, there goes my truck," and the
Yeah,
truck
they were
it
really,
floated away, and then the tide brought it back, right?
Yeah, but not in the same condition.
No,
no,
I wouldn't imagine.
no. What I remember so clearly in your videos and all was the noise. I mean,
It
the
was something.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, deafening and terrifying noise of the hurricane.
And you had nice, expensive storm windows that blew right out.
With the best storm windows, they blew out. I just had installed a commercial grade generator, um, built 18 feet above sea level on this wooden tower. 300 years from now, this wooden tower will still stand. But when the wind hit about 67 miles an hour, the doors of the generator blew off and the generator quit. And I'm telling you, it was a very, very expensive generator. So we had no help in that regard. Um, Advice to people, we really never know where a hurricane is going to land until about 12 hours before. That's the window. It's about 12 hours. I have vacated during previous hurricanes, as we were told to do. In 2017, Hurricane Irma, the governor of Florida came on and said, if you don't leave in the next 2 hours, speaking to people in the Prairie Islands, if you don't leave in the next 2 hours, it's too late. So my wife and I, we trailered up my boat, my John Deere tractor, my Ford Raptor, and we drove 40 miles inland to a defunct gun club I lease. I have a rifle range, pistol range, 500 acres, a lodge. We drove there to escape this hurricane. At the last hour, it changed courses, and the damn hurricane went right over my gun lodge. It took the roof off the place. It knocked down all the trees. We did as we were warned and told to do. So you never really know. My advice to people is quite simple and honest. Find out where Randy is and do not go there.
There's a new Netflix series, some of you probably seen it, about Katrina. And yeah, it's devastating to watch. They talk about the same thing, the 12-hour, people were hoping at the last minute that it would change course and not hit New Orleans full on like it did.
Well, the irony of that, Patrick, and I mentioned it in One Deadly Eye, is to pray that the hurricane hits somewhere else is to pray that it hits someone else.
Right.
It's a curious thing,
Right.
It's a curious truth.
Let's see some questions here. Here's an interesting one from our friend Stefania from Italy. She says the plot of this book reminded me a bit of Emilio Salgari's stories. Do you know him? He's an Italian writer, the creator of San Ducan. Does that ring a bell to you?
No recollection whatsoever. My Italian I have zero Italian. I speak a little Spanish, but no. But
Wow. He was a controversial person. He killed himself with the seppuku technique, kind of like Mishima. Mishima, right?
What the hell does that mean? The seppuku?
Suicide by.
Seppuku? It's when you disembowel yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I can assure this young person that we have next to nothing in common because that ain't going to happen.
I hope not.
In my early years, when I wanted to be a writer, I also consciously decided I'm not going to be nuts. I'm not going to be crazy. I'm not going to be an alcoholic. I'm not going to be a druggie. I decided all those things because I'd read so many writers fall victim to that stuff. And so what a cruel, I should not pass judgment, but what a cruel thing to do to one's family.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not going to slice open my big beer belly with.
Well, it was the Japanese honor system. I mean, if you read Shogun, you got to see a lot of it. That was how the Japanese, the emperor, whoever it is, would order them. And that's what they did. And then you had a friend standing by to lop off your head so that you didn't suffer for very long.
Oh, I am aware of that. And that's,
Very civilized.
that ain't going to happen. It just.
Let me switch over to YouTube here. There are a couple of questions that have come in. Jeff asks, he says, I'm a new reader. I just read Sanibel Flats in August. Do you recommend that I continue in the order of the series? Do you think that's necessary?
No, I don't think it is at all. I wrote all the books as standalones. The one exception would be the current book, Tomlinson's Wake. That would be the only exception. No, I wrote them all as standalone books for a simple reason. I didn't know there would be more. I would get a contract for 2 books, maybe 3 books, but no, I wrote them all as standalones, and hopefully they stand alone.
Well, they do stand alone, but as a person who actually has read them in real time as they published, I prefer to read them in order since it is actually possible to do that. Many long-term series you can't source the early books anymore, but it is possible to read Randy's books, and I would recommend going that route.
I would agree with your advice, and all my books are still in print. It's amazing. They're all
It's wonderful, and I mean you're absolutely right that the mystery, whatever you want to call it, the plot is resolves in every single book, but it's the characters that I think it's fascinating to watch them develop over time. And it's actually fascinating to read Randy and watch how he develops over time as a writer, which is, you can't do it if you hopscotch through the books.
hopscotch. You're right. By gum, you're right.
I am
This-
always right.
I know.
This is a-
No. I know. No. I agree.
This is a good time for this question. Somebody's mentioning, your early men's adventure, books that were written under a couple of different pseudonyms.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Carl Ram and Randy Stryker was
Oh,
one of the
God help us.
young
Yeah.
ones. Was that a useful kind of apprenticeship for you to kind of learn the ins and outs of writing a story?
Patrick, I think it was. I was a full-time fishing guide. I was on the water 300 days a year, with rare exception, but I was just determined to become a writer. And I had a huge break in 1978 when Rolling Stone magazine started Outside Magazine. Brilliant magazine. Some of the best writers in the country. Jim Harrison, Peter Matheson, Thomas McGuane, Hunter S. Thompson, Edward Abbey. Outside Magazine. This was the coolest magazine in America. And I wrote a story. And I sent it to them over the transom, as they called it in those years, back when I was a fishing guide. The first year the magazine came out, magnificent magazine, photography out of this world, and the best writers in America. And I sent them a story. I paddled a canoe from Sanibel down to Key Largo, all through the 10,000 islands, and I wrote a story about it. Sent it to them, and maybe 2 weeks later, the then editor of Outside Magazine, Terry McDonald, a brilliant editor, a terrific editor, and a very, very gruff guy. He probably still is. And he called me at the marina at lunchtime. The phone rings. Mac, the proprietor, Randy, you got a phone call. I go into the office. Hello, is this Randy White? Yes, it is. This is Terry McDonald, Outside Magazine. We got your story. We can't use this. I went, oh, well, gosh, thanks for calling. And he said, no, I want you to try something else. Terry saw something, and I wrote a story for Outside. In fact, it was a cover story. They put it on the cover, the first year of that brilliant magazine's existence. And that began a cachet in New York when I was a fishing guide. And so a book editor, New American Library, an editor named Joni Hitzig, called me, and I will abbreviate this as best I can, said, Randy, I've read your stories in Outside Magazine, and we're starting a thriller series about a Key West charter captain. And we know you live in Key West, which of course I don't, but I said, yeah, great sunsets here. And we want this action character. We're gonna start with 4 books all at once. We're gonna have 4 different writers, but they're all gonna write about the same character. And we would like you to try one of these books. And she gave me an outline of this character, Dusky McMorgan. Kind of cool name. He had to have had a shark scar. He had to have been in Vietnam. Well, I've been in that area part of my life. He had to have known Hemingway. Now, I'm no historian, but even then I realized there's a timeline problem here to a degree, but I'm all for it. And you write 2 chapters and send it to me within a week. I wrote the whole damn book in 9 days. And that's true. And on an old black Underwood typewriter, 2-finger typist. She send it to us within 2 weeks. I sent her the whole book, the mailed in manuscript, the whole book. She calls me a week later, a bit taken aback. She said, "Do you think you can do this again?" I went, "Hell yeah." So they fired the other three writers. And I began writing these thriller novels, Dusty McMorgan. It was great training for me. But I realized fairly early during that time, and again, I was writing for one of the best magazines in the country. I thought I should be writing my own books. But yeah, it was great training. Dusty McMorgan.
And were some of those outside articles collected later? I think they were, weren't they?
Yes, they were still in print. Yes, they are.
Yeah. What was the name of that first collection that came out?
Bat fishing in the rainforest.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
my favorite of all your titles. Then we got The Sharks of Lake Nicaragua.
Nicaragua.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you wrote Last Flight Out, An American Travel. And I remember the cookbook, the Gulf
Yep,
Coast
cookbook.
Country, and Doc Ford Country, which was, I think, just an ebook, but I would love to see it in print.
Well, I know a publisher in Arizona. Maybe we can work something out.
No, you don't. We sold the company in 2018. It's
And
now owned by Random House.
I heard you made a lot of, God bless you. You, I'm sure, realize how shallow I am when it comes to money. And I'm all for making a profit. I'm all for that.
Well, it was a wonderful 20 years running Poison Pen Press, and I miss it, but it was time to let it grow into something bigger. You wrote 2, 4, 6, 7. Fiction is Randy Stryker, starting with the Key West connection for
Yes.
anybody. I'm sitting here looking at Randy has written so many books. Let me show you, because publishers do this, that this entire page is a listing of Randy's books. So, allows you, buy the new one, you can track all the old ones. Fiction is Carl Ram, fiction is Randy Stryker, nonfiction, Shark series. Those were the children's books, weren't they?
I wrote 4 of those, and I think they're among my best books. I really like them. It was a chance to share with young people in an intelligent way about boating safety, not in a preachy way, but
Right.
in a way of letting young people know how to behave on the water.
So that was Fin, Stingers, Crocs, and Megalops. And then you wrote 4 Hannah Smith books. And Hannah, as I mentioned at the beginning of all this, is a romantic interest of Doc Ford and a really great character in her own right.
I love her. Yeah.
Me too. So anyway, she's still around.
And
Anything else, Patrick?
Questions? The last one was involving who would play in the TV series Doc Ford and Tomlinson. Who would be your choices?
I've seldom watched movies. We are working on a deal with Apple Films, it's called, and there's 2 major producers. They've flown out to Florida. I really like these guys, and I've met a ton of people from Hollywood, and just but who knows? But who would I choose? Gene Hackman, but he's dead. For Doc Ford. Tomlinson, I don't know. And I stay out of it. I don't think about it. And
You wouldn't
I just write
consider the casting anyway. But yeah, Gene Hackman, that's a really interesting choice for Doc Ford. I sort of like that.
Yeah, I thought he was terrific.
Yeah, he was a wonderful actor. I can still see him under the subway in New York or under the L. I mean,
Yeah, Popeye.
yeah, it was a great scene. Really was. Well, Randy, thank you. It's great to spend an hour with you. For those of you watching,
Delighted.
our copies, Randy is going to, I hope, send them to us maybe Monday. So we should have them at the end of next week, which will be absolutely great.
I will definitely send him my money. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Right.